Are our children playing enough matches? Welcome to a new episode of Football West's Western End podcast. I'm Josh Chiat, and that is the key question today's guest Carlos Perez Salvatierra is asking about the game in Australia. The Spaniard is now the head coach of Melbourne Victory in the A-League, but he has built up his coaching repertoire on the back of 6 years working at Real Madrid's academy. In that time, he came across future superstars like Juan Mata, Dani Carvajal, and Jose Callejon. Carlos gives myself, Gareth Naven, and all of our listeners some insight into what changes he'd like to see to develop these kinds of players in local ranks. Welcome to this episode of the Western End. We've got a familiar voice on the line here in Gareth Naven, Youth Development Officer at Football West. How are you doing, Gareth?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Josh.
And just introducing our main guest today as well, we've got Carlos Perez Salvatierra. He's had a long career in football, stretching back to his time back in his native Spain. Aspects of his resume, time spent with UB Conquense, the Real Madrid Academy between 1999 and 2005, CD Guadalajara in the lower leagues in Spain. He was also a scout at Villarreal, right when they were starting to become a bit of a power in Spanish football in the mid-2000s. And now he's made his way to Australia. He's a long way from home during the COVID-19 situation. Carlos has taken on the role recently as the head coach of Melbourne Victory after a couple of years as an assistant. How are you doing today, Carlos?
Good, thank you. Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Gareth, and you for the invitation.
It must be quite difficult right now. Obviously, the league stalled about a month ago. What are you doing to work with the players at Melbourne Victory and keep them engaged and keep their interest in football up?
Yes, here we are most of the time at home, just trying to prepare the competition. If we are not sure if the competition is down or we're going to continue playing the last games or just stop and think in the next. And the players, they are working individual, following the program that we have sent to them. But we cannot train football. That is what we want to do and play games.
And going back to your own time in Spain and getting started in football, what was it that turned you to coaching at such a young age? And was a career as a professional footballer ever something that was on the cards for you?
When I was finishing my career as a player, I started to train in under 8s. Remember my first team, under 8s, and then continue after finish as a player, continue training and in all the levels, continue under 10, 12, 14, under 18, and then with amateur and professional teams. I am happy because I spent my last 20 years, more or less, training in all the levels in Spain, except the first division. And now here in Australia, I have the opportunity to start in Melbourne Victory in the top category.
For you, what was the most memorable experience that you ever had as a coach, both in Spain and coming to Australia as well?
I enjoy really in all the levels. Training was really special for me. I spent 6 years in Real Madrid with one of the best players that they are now playing in top level in Europe, in the national teams, and winning Champions League and World Cups. Probably was my of the most or more when I enjoyed most training players. But as well, every year is a challenge because always you can find good players that you are trying to develop, to try to help them to follow the dream, to be professional in sometimes in difficult scenarios like in Spain, because it's not easy. Go to the first division there, and some of them they cannot continue his dream and they have to stop in other categories. But it's a challenge to continue as well with the relation with some of them and watching on TV in the best clubs in the world.
From your time at Real Madrid, you spoke about having players who progressed to the top level. Which players that you coached there stood out to you the most in terms of your memories of them as footballers?
Really, that some of them, or they are not playing football now, or some of them are are playing in the second or third division in Spain. Another one with really good player was probably Juan Mata, the striker of Manchester United. Is one of the best players for me, or Jose Callejon, the striker of Napoli as well, or Carvajal, the fullback in the first team of Real Madrid now. But if I have to choose just one, probably as a person, as a player, Juan Mata.
Did you feel like you left any imprint on him at all as a coach, or to you are the successes of the players purely down to just the players themselves?
Not just me and all the coaches that they had in his career. We're talking about that at the end, player is just the player and the experience with the different teams and with the different coaches. I think that every coach has a how you say in English, have a part of the success of the player. Sometimes it's a small part, and with other players, maybe it's a big part.
Did you know at a young age that a player like Juan Mata or Jose Callejon that they were going to go on to play at a really elite level?
Yes and no. I put you an example. I remember coach them with under 16. Imagine 20 players in Real Madrid with a really high level. Probably in that moment, 10 international players with Spain and another with another countries, and you have the expectation that all of them can go to the first division or to the top level. And some of them, sometimes you put the finger in one player, and maybe this player at the end just play a few games in the top level. And other players that in that moment was a different situation, and now they are captains in top levels in Europe. It's difficult to say to under 16 or under 17 player if he's going to be a big professional. For sure that they can play there, all of them, but sometimes they need a piece of luck, a lot of work, of course, but all of them have enough talent to play in the top level. All of the players in these academies with 16, 17 years old, they have the possibility to play there.
So I think one of the first questions I wanted to ask Carlos is, and it's quite broad, is, how does the play develop in Spain?
Now in this moment, the players are starting in early learning into the academies, in football academies. A few years ago, the kids start playing in the streets or in the parks, but in the last 10 years, 15 years, is developed starting in academy. Depend of the level of the club. It's possible to join an academy of the first level of Real Madrid, Atletico, Barcelona with 8 years old or 9. And in other academies, teams, we're talking about teams with good structure in the second and the third division. Some of them start with 5 or 4 years old, like Villarreal in one of my last clubs. They are starting with kids with 4 or 5.
That's incredible to think of professional clubs that are starting with players as young as that, giving them almost a football philosophy to follow from that young an age.
Yes, it's possible. They try to teach football and as well some values that are different in every club, because it's really difficult to know if a kid with 8 years old is in the future will be a professional player or not. But it's a complete attitude for in the part of the clubs to teach football in general, because it's a massive sport in Spain, in our country, and most of the kids they want to be players. It's not difficult to find academic close to your house, to your residence, to your school, to start really early to play football. I understand the football with trainings and with games, with both. I cannot understand football just playing games or just training. You need both. And in Spain, we are starting really, really early with both, with the trainings and with the competition.
Carlos, I was going to ask you, in Spain, what what is their playing format or process from, like you say, if they come in at under eights, how many times a week do they train? How many months do they train for? The playing format, is it 2v2, 3v3, 4v4?
I try to explain. We have different levels. Every 2 years, the players are changing the category of the level. Under 8 and under 9, they are training the same competition. Under 10, under 8 till under 10, under 11 and 12, under 13 and 14 is another level. And we are starting with a couple of trainings per week, normally 2 trainings when the kids are under 8, and they have a regular competition as well. That means that the kid first training during the year start with more or less with the school. It's about October or September, and finish like the school May or June. That means 2 training plus 1 game every weekend. This is when we start with 8. If you are going a little bit more far with 12, 13, or with 14, with 10 or 11, they can train 3 times per week plus match. And with 14, now 14, 15, 16 till professional, 4 trainings plus game every year. Every year, 10 months, training and games. This is our structure in Spain, talking about football, and it's the same in basketball or in another big sports there.
Was there a time when you were starting out in youth coaching that fundamentally changed? I know there was a lot of thinking in the Spanish game after a period without a lot of success in the early to mid 90s, and that obviously must have played a role in the country becoming the youth football production line it did through the 2000s.
Yes, the first team of the national team, they won the world champions and 2 European Cups a few years ago. For us was a problem because all the youth teams, they were winning European and world champions under 16, 17, 18s. But at the end was a problem to do the same with the first team. But what's happened with us? Maybe we start early that in other countries with the competition, with the structure, and this is good for the youth teams. As well, we prepare the national teams starting with a regional competition with under 14. We have 18 different regions in Spain, and the federation created 20 years ago a competition, a strong competition under 14, just for regions, the best players of every team. The example is that sometimes the finals are Madrid against Catalonia. What means that the best players of Atletico, Real Madrid, or Getafe are playing against the best player of Espanyol or Barcelona. Under 14, under 16, and under 18. And this is really good for the national team coaches to identify the best players in the country in this age. And always starting with the academies of the best teams in our country, that they have the best players in under 8, under 10. They are doing trials to try to get the best players in all the region, like Madrid or Barcelona or in other part of Spain.
And what was the philosophy when you were working at Real Madrid?
Starting with the kids, they have to enjoy. They have to enjoy. We must know that we are preparing players for the first team. This is important to know as well. It's not easy to stay there to play in this kind of class, because it's a really high competition between the kids and Real Madrid or Barcelona. They have the possibility, when the kids are under 14, we have the possibility to bring players of all the Spain. We have a big residence in Villarreal or Real Madrid. We are talking about 80 or 90 players that they are out of Madrid or out of Villarreal for different regions. And it's a big challenge for all the players. And I remember when I started training Real Madrid in under 10, and the last 12 players that that at the end start the competition with me. I remember to do trials. We're talking about 2,000 kids just in Madrid, to trying to find the best players in that moment for the team.
I was going to ask you, Carlos, with the younger kids, under fives, under sevens, under eights, under nines, tens, the quality of the coach education process in Spain, and the quality of the coaches in those lower age groups, are they really important to Spain and the development of players?
In Spain, the coach license, we have 3 or 4 different levels: C, B, A, and Pro. And the first level is more specific to training the youth teams till 8 years old till 18. And the second level is more for amateur or for professional. But all the coaches in all the academies, they have the license. And some of them, probably all of them in the big academies, they are pro license, training under 10 years old boys. The focus is always train or coach them with ball, always trying to do the global training, global methodology, trying to start to understand the game. Some of the players, they have really good skills and really good technique, but just because they were born with this technique, and the coaches, they try to put this technique, individual technique, into the service to the game. But the focus is always in the early ages. The focus is on the player, not on the team. We know that we have a competition, and of course that everyone wants to win the games, but the focus is in the development of the players. Because at the end, if you are winning the competition under 10, doesn't matter. What you need is to create players for the first team, or just create players to develop your identity, your methodology in your club, but always with the focus on the player.
Obviously, we talk about and the importance of playing matches, how important that our players play matches. Could you give our listeners an understanding of, how many matches do the youth players play in Spain? From an under 8 upwards, possibly across the competitions and the competition structures. Is there a minimum amount they play in each age group, and possibly more so a maximum amount they play probably during the season?
Under 8, we are talking about that they play during 9-10 months, probably 9 months in this moment. We are talking about 4 matches per month. Minimum, the players just training 2 times per week. They play official games with the regular league and finals, minimum 30 games, 25, 30 games, with 8 years old. A little bit more with 10, with 12, or with 14. Now we are talking about maybe 40 games, official games, every year. I think that is really, really important. And as well, sometimes it's not just play games, it's play really competitive games against another good teams, not just play games.
And you would be talking about a huge volume of academies over in Spain as well. And it's not just La Liga clubs that are out there that have those. I'm sure there's private academies, there's lower league clubs and local clubs where you'd have good players playing. There must be a lot of opportunities to find strong competition for players in those junior age groups in Spain.
Yes, just in Madrid, just talking about Madrid, imagine that is the same thing, in Barcelona or Valencia. Just in Madrid, under 8 in football, 7, playing 7 against 7. Just in Madrid, we have 66 groups, different groups of 12 teams, okay? And under 10, Madrid now, the Federation of Madrid, is running 88 different groups with 12 teams per group. We are talking about thousands of players. What's happening in Spain, that a regular team, doesn't matter if it's the La Liga or the second, third, or fourth division, probably they have 10, 15 teams under age. They are controlling 100, 150 players. And just they have to do, put the name you want, Real Madrid A, B, C, D, E, F, G, finish in the L or M, depend on the capacity of the facilities, or depend of how many under age teams you want to have in your club. And then it's like a pyramid that's really big in the base, and then you have less groups and less teams, under 10, under 12, under 14. But you can start with minimum 10, 15 teams in under age, because it's difficult to know. In that moment, if you have a trial, it's difficult to know who is the best player, who are the best players in this age. You need to open a little bit the base of the pyramid, and then grow up, continue with less teams, but trying to develop players.
So you've got players playing, there's a huge depth of competition, even at the junior level in Spain. Players are playing 40 games a year, probably most of the year round almost. When you compare that to what you've seen so far in Australia, Carlos and Gareth, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this as well. How much is the level and the amount of football that players here need to make up to get the same experience out of their football that junior players do in Spain?
For me, that's the question. That's the key. The number of games and the number of really hard games that you are playing. Here in Australia, I'm now in the first team in the Melbourne Victory. Our problem is the players with 17, 18 or 19 years old, that they're going to the first team, but they are playing just a couple of games, talking about 10 games, 12 games during the previous years. And some of them are really, really competitive games. And this is a big difference if you want to compare a kid of Spain or a kid in Australia. It's the number of the games. One example that sometimes I was talking with Gareth during last year. If we imagine a player with 20, 21 years old playing in the first division in Madrid, Real Madrid against Atletico, of course that this is a real difficult first game. It's a challenge for this player, but maybe this player played against Atletico 20, 25 times during his life, because with 8 years old he played against Atletico minimum 2, 3, 4 times. Same with under 9, 10, 11. They have big experience during his career, during his youth career, playing important games against Atletico, or in international tournaments, or big tournaments in Easter, or in Christmas against Barcelona, or against Manchester United or Liverpool. These kind of games, at the end, they are helping in the develop of the players. It's totally different to arrive to the first division or to the A-League, playing 20 or more times against Barcelona or against Atletico. They just arrive to the A-League and play against Senior C your first time in your life. It's totally different for me. I don't know the opinion of Gareth.
Look, the one thing that is really achievable with some quick planning is to increase the number of games players play across the competition structure, across the age groups, and even challenge our clubs to put on tournaments during long weekends, put on different ideas to play more football, and start to slowly leak this into football to make sure we play more often rather than less often. And that's across the broad base of our grassroots all the way through, across football generally. And I know my time at Melbourne Victory, one of the really important tasks was, especially in the youth team, was we had a Melbourne Victory competition that we played 28 games. We had 8 MYLs, that's 36. But we thought 36 was just a minimum number. We wanted to progress that to another to 40. We wanted to go to 45. We wanted to go to 50 games. And this is for, a group of players who are 15, 16 to, 18, 19 years old. So they're more ready to play men's football, experience different situations more often, tougher games, not so tough games, and experience of football. So when they're ready for A-League first team, it's the gap isn't as big, And obviously with that, as a young player, we've got to look at what content we're delivering, always help our coaches, just expand our culture in football to see it more often and play it more often. I think that's one of the really important challenges that I think is a good challenge for us to try and move towards. I suppose one of the questions I'd like to ask Carlos is that obviously you've been in Australia a while. You've experienced obviously the A-League. You've experienced the youth system as such as well, and more moving towards. What's your opinion on obviously the technical qualities of players sort of here in Australia, and obviously comparing that to your experiences, like Josh has said, at Real Madrid, in Spain across the board, at probably the various levels of, young players, 8 to 11, and then maybe 13 to 15, and then 16 and above.
If we compare a kid from Madrid with 8 years old and a kid from Perth or Melbourne with 8 years old, they have the same technique, the same. The problem is what is happening in the next years, because if you compare the same kids when they have 16 years old, they are totally different players. That's the question for me, because it's not a problem to born in Australia or in Spain to play football. The problem is what's happening in the next 5-6 years with these kids. Will be interesting to just to control 2 kids with the same age in the different countries and have a look after a few years in the develop. It's not question of the individual technique. At the end, it's question of the system programs, the how many trainings, how many days are you involved in football? Because at the end, we are talking about to spend 10 months training football every year. Straight go to the school in the morning and then go to the training in the afternoon, evening, and play a game every weekend. For me, that's the key. Of course, that is the system of training, of course, but as well the numbers of trainings and the competitions of these players. But the technique will be the same with 8 years old for both.
Carlos, where would you go with? And I know we've spoken about the number of games players play, and there are different levels of complexity to that as well. Like, for instance, I live in Kalgoorlie, which is a regional area where kids, we're not even talking about 25 games. They might only get the opportunity domestically to play at most 15 games in a season. But in terms of the curriculum, is there anything that you would change based on your experiences in Spain about the curriculum in Australia that you feel would help us produce more technically and individually capable footballers in Australia?
Probably the competition as well in the senior teams, because we are talking about that all the teams, they have an academy here, and here the A-League teams, they are starting now with the academy in the last 1 or 2 years. For me, this is a problem that all the teams, all the senior teams, they have the academy. And then you can create a competition, first regional, of course, and you can create a competition because you have enough teams in every part of Australia if you want to create this regular competition. You have minimum 12 or 20 teams minimum to create a group or 2 groups or 3, depends. And then try to start with this kind of competition, if it's possible, early in regional. And when they are going up, you can open a little bit and play some tournaments or play some competitions, West against North or against Queensland or against Victoria when they are old. But for me, it's really important to start in soccer here, like in football, with academies, with a clear program, with a clear idea to develop the players, to start with big numbers if it's possible for you. And here in Australia, for me, it's not excuse the the facilities, because we have here huge space, more and better facility than in Spain. It's no question about the space, because you can train with hundreds of kids if you have the possibility to start with under 8.
Look, my time at Melbourne Victory, I had some really interesting conversations with Carlos about, how we get better and how we learn. And I think it's important that, we listen to people who have got some experience in the technical side of football, the football stuff, which is really important. And at times it stops us from going forward. And that's definitely the challenge. Shaping our game, adapting our game, programs, coach education, helping our clubs across all levels of football to, at the end of the day, help players and develop ideas that are going to get better. And I think that Carlos has provided us some really important insight in regards to his experience in Spain. And I've had a lot of these conversations with Carlos along my time with him in Melbourne. And, I hope our listeners, if they've got any questions, maybe they'd want to come back through yourself and me, and we can ask if they want to ask some questions through the Facebook, Instagram, or wherever you post it, Josh. We're definitely happy to get back to listeners on that. In regards, if there's something that maybe you would like us to ask him that we haven't asked in this particular episode, happy to do that in the future. But I'd just like to thank Carlos for his time, and want to wish him all the best and his family all the best, because he's a long way from home at the moment. And, all the best to Melbourne Victory and what happens next for the club and you, Carlos, as well.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank you very much for the invitation. Just one thing to finish, if it's possible. When you are a kid and you want to play football, really, what you want is play games. You don't want to go just to train. You don't want just train to get fit, or just to do a dribbling between cones. What you want is play game, they score goals or stop goals if you are a goalkeeper. This is the best. The players, the kids, they have to enjoy training every day. If we are not doing the possibility to enjoy to the kids, this is a problem when they are growing up. But if the players enjoy training, enjoy playing, this is for me the main thing, that they want to play football. No, they want to train, and we have to create the scenario during the trainings to play in small games, to play small matches with small goals, with small balls, and to put easy to them to try to create a good environment to enjoy and to love the sport like the European players, not just Spanish.
Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Western Ed podcast with our guest, Carlos Perez Salvatore, head coach at Melbourne Victory in the A-League and a former academy coach at Real Madrid in Spain, one of the biggest football clubs in the world. It was great to hear his insights. If you have a question for any of the guests we've had on the show so far, let us know via Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, anywhere you're on social media, and we'll follow them up. To subscribe to the Western End, head over to Apple Podcasts or give us a follow on Spotify. Until next time, keep on kicking.